A very good morning to all of you. I hope that I'm audible. Professor Metika, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, now Professor Metika is with us. So today's lecture is again the continuation of how to write a good proposal or proposal writing. I hope that you have found that a very fruitful session on yesterday. And today again that our kind invitation, Professor Metika is here with us. So Madam, shall we start it now, or are we going to have a few minutes till the members are joining?
We can wait if you like, it's only 121 people have joined.
Yeah, so let's have another few minutes. Right, till that I'll give you a few announcements. And next week on Saturday that we will have Professor Priyan Dias, and he will talk about how we can use our prior knowledge into research. And also Wednesday we are planning to have the review, how to review a research article or how to review scientific writing, because we know that by knowing that how they are reviewing, we can target to our writing or the writing topics towards that. And so like that, the arrangements are there. And okay, the same link you can use, as well as that if you want to get the certificate, you have to register, and please log into the IESL website, and there you can see under the CPD programs where you have to register. And so you have to register only once, and so this is for the newcomers. And if you find this is a good session, then share with your friends and colleagues, because it's free of charge. You have to pay only for getting the certificate. Right, okay, with that small notifications, I'll handing over the session to Professor Metika Vittange, Madam. The forum is over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bandhani Atapattu, for your introduction and, having me on board to discuss regarding the research proposal writing. So we discussed some of the items yesterday. I hope you have got some insights regarding what a proposal is and what are the main components in a scientific proposal. Especially we were targeting on grant proposals yesterday. So grants are very important. I'm not sure whether this particular forum has, like scientists, academics, as well as students. So students may not have much experience on grant proposal writing, but the young academics might have. So I tried to give you some insights and some advices on how to improve your writing towards winning grants. Especially, grants are very important, as I told you yesterday. That is important for us as for our career development, for our CV. At the same time, for us to have some support from other organizations to carry out our own research. Specifically, I target grants to get students funding so that I can pay a stipend for 2-3 years for them, so that they can perform a good research and write quite a lot of scientific articles published in high impact journals. So that was the discussion yesterday. We actually thought of discussed about how to formulate the introduction and justification for the proposal, and how to work on the objectives and so on. So from there onwards, we will talk about the rest of the grant proposal types today. Especially when you are carrying out your introduction part, introduction section, and also the literature review section. There will be a chance for you to have a high similarity with your work and already published work. We call it as plagiarism, or we call it as similarity index. So it's very important and ethically essential for you to, reduce or for you to eliminate plagiarism in your proposal. There are not many chances, but they are checking your proposal for plagiarism. But time to time, some universities, they tend to test the plagiarism or check the similarity of your proposal with the existing work. So if you are caught of plagiarism, that would not be very good, and your proposal will not be passed. Therefore, try to reduce plagiarism as much as possible. Normally, in a scientific paper, we allow like 20% plagiarism. So that will be applicable for the proposals as well. But in my case, I don't, I don't think I would go for proposals which have more than 10% plagiarism. So it's very important for you to identify the source and refer or the site, whatever, where you are taking stuff from, and summarize useful points, and avoid cutting and pasting in your work. Whatever the work you do, like scientific writing, proposal writing, so try to avoid cutting and pasting into your article or into your document. So after the introduction section, after incorporating the objectives of your work, of your proposal, planned work, you shall be working on the methodology section. So this methodology section is very important. By reading the methodology section, the evaluators would understand whether you have actually gone through the prior work, right? Because you have to incorporate the methodology which you are planned to carry out the proposed project. So in that sense, you must read the previous literature, how they have tackled the similar kind of problems, what kind of methodologies that they have used, what are the techniques, what are the instruments that they have used, and so on. By writing the methodology, you would understand whether you have the access to similar instruments in your institute, or whether you must find out a simple other method if you don't have advanced instrumentation in your place. So that is also one benefit that you will be getting by writing this methodology section. So by this particular section, evaluators will judge the validity of results and whatever the discussions that you will be coming up after you perform the research. Right? So in the methodology section, your proposal has multiple parts. You need to discuss about the instrumentation and infrastructure, whether you can actually carry out this proposed research in your institute or whatever the institute that you are planning to propose. Instrumentation specifically important. Otherwise, if you don't have those said instruments, then you will be in trouble, in the middle of the research. And then you have to write about, or you have to discuss about the study groups and ethics. Here ethics means some research, specifically the medical research, biological research, that kind of research must involve, may involve patients, people, who, animals and so on. So for those things, you need to get ethical clearance from a ethical review committee. So without that ethical clearance, you actually cannot carry out your research. And for the ethical, obtaining ethical clearance takes time. Like sometimes it takes like 3 months, sometimes more than that, because the ethical review committee must meet, discuss your proposal, and see whether the approval can be given or not. Therefore, ethical clearance better to be taken prior you start the research. So you need to mention about the the need of ethical clearance if you need. And you need to mention about the study population and the sample size. If you are planning it in the proposed the research in the separate location, like for sampling, if you're going sampling in various different places, you need to mention those things, and you need to state why you are selecting these particular places for sampling, right? So these things you need to mention. And then access to samples, where, how you are going to collect the samples, from where, and how many controls, how many replicates, and many more. So those things you need to state, and you need to give a sample design. If you have a design, sampling design for your sampling protocol, then you need to mention how you selected which kind of sampling protocol, whether it is random sampling, whether it is stratified random sampling, and so on. Then you will have to mention what kind of data analysis you do. Before that, you need to mention how you are going to analyze your data. If you're taking water samples, what kind of parameters you will be measuring, and what kind of instruments that you will be having to measure these parameters. And how you pre-treat the samples, how you store the samples, how do you transport the samples. So those things better to mention. When you mention those things, people, the evaluators will have an idea that, okay, this particular person has some thorough idea about what he or she is going to do or planning to do. So the analytical techniques you should mention. At the same time, you should not mention it very elaborately. but you can mention it within 2-3 sentences, particular technique you can mention within 2-3 sentences. And if you have the equipments in your premises, you can mention the model name. Then you will discuss about how do you analyze the data. What kind of statistical technique you will use to analyze the data, what kind of statistical program, what kind of graphing software that you will be using to analyze your data, and so on. So these things you need to mention in your methodology section of the proposal. When you are listing and discussing these 4 aspects in your methodology section, you need to justify why did you select this particular methodology, if there are several other methodologies available. And then when you are justifying those things, you need to cite the literature. You need to show where you have taken the methodology from. Where is the original, who did the original work and how did they do? So those things you need to cite, right? So by justifying, you need to cite and explain why you have selected this particular method and, from where. From that, you can show that you have understood the principles, why you have selected this particular methodology, what are the advantages of this particular methodology over other methodologies, if there's any other methodologies, and so on. So by writing the methodology, you will be proving the feasibility of your study, right? If it is not feasible, the granting, ability or the granting percentage of granting will be less. Because if I get a proposal from one of you, and if I understand that the particular institute does not have the resources that you are proposing to carry out your research, then I will definitely have a question how feasible this project for you to carrying out in your particular place. If you don't have that facility, then you can mention the collaborations that you have, and you can incorporate the collaborators or the co-investigators letters to show that, okay, even if I don't have these instruments in my premises, through collaborations, through the co-investigators, I will be able to, fulfill the requirement. So methods which are doing to be followed during the research will be discussed in detail with clarity, and it should have a flow. If you have mentioned 3 objectives, so the methodology should follow these 3 objectives consecutively, right? So that is how we maintain the flow. Need citing literature during you discuss the methodology, and it is important to cite the instruments or mention what kind of instrument will be used and their model numbers if possible. It is very important to incorporate clear information on control experiments and replicates. That's very, very important, because without control, you can't compare the data and show or prove this is exactly what is happening. So it's very important for you to show what kind of controls that you will be using and how those controls be treated. And then you need to mention the replicates. Normally it is triplicates that we use, but if it is biological sciences, they usually go more than 5 replicates. So keep that in mind. In physical sciences, it's more or less triplicates. So you need to give information on selecting the sample. Where is the sample site? Why do you select the particular sample site? And the sample size and the techniques, analytical techniques you use to analyze the sample as well as the analyzed data. Then the methodology section should deliver the way of achieving the idea of the proposed proposal. You have set out 3 or more objectives. So you will be discussing, you will be showing, demonstrating how you are going to achieve each of these objectives. What kind of methods that you will be using to achieve each of these objectives. It's very important for you to write about the data analysis. So during data analysis, you will describe how you collect the data, and then what are the effects to be analyzed, how you're going to analyze, what kind of, are you comparing, or are you, doing a routine analysis or something like that, spatially, temporally comparison, or GIS-based comparison, all these things, mapping and so on. And then you can give the examples of types of tests that you will use. Especially if you are using statistical techniques, then you have to mention what type of statistical techniques you will be using. Then all these data analysis should be linked with the hypothesis, right? So you have to have a clear idea. Whenever you are writing all these things, you must go and see, what was my hypothesis, what were my objectives. So whenever you go and see, you will have a reminder coming up, okay, I should write on these things. So otherwise, you will be deviating. So what are the do's? You need to connect to the objectives. That is why I told you, you need to go and look at the objectives. Otherwise, you will, forget. So that is natural. Anybody can forget. And so to avoid forgetting and to avoid deviating from the objectives, you need to go look at the objectives, and then you can connect to the objectives by writing the methodology and data analysis section. You can provide examples like citing, by citing, right? These kind of tests that have been used and so on. And you need to demonstrate the cost effectiveness of your methodology. There may be many different methodologies, but those might be very expensive and might need sophisticated instruments and so on. So you need to find, depending on the availability of the equipment, you may need to find good methodologies that have been already validated in the previous publications. So you can demonstrate the cost effectiveness of methodologies that you are using in your research. What are don'ts? When you write the methodology, don't assume things, right? Assuming things, if I feel like, okay, this particular proposal have assumed that they might be able to collect 100 samples and so on. But if I feel like collecting 100 samples is not possible, or it's a bit impossible, thinking about the context. Like nowadays in Sri Lanka, if you plan a research where you are collecting samples, water samples from the 25 districts, then I will really think, okay, this is not be possible at this moment. So then the weight or marks given for your methodology or your proposal will be less. And don't forget about the audience. That is very important because you are writing your proposal to get some funding or get some instruments or something in a competitive basis. So if you forget the readers or the evaluators of your proposal, then you will deviate from whatever you are writing, right? So you really need to think about the audience, think about the benefit to the other people whenever you are writing the methodology of this proposed proposal. Then you are writing the timeline, right? You exactly, this is very important. You really need to put a timeline. If you don't have a timeline, then that proposal will be really rejected right away. Because without a timeline, you can't go ahead with the research, right? So you really need to have a proper timeline. And it should not be exaggerated, or it should not be like packed with various different types of work. So this particular timeline will be very helpful for you to understand whether you are going in the correct way at the correct time, even after you get the grant. So by looking at the timeline, by looking at the progress of your work, especially when you are given a grant, the progress will be assessed with time. Sometimes it is quarterly progress, sometimes it is, yearly progress, sometimes it is, biannually progress, and so on. So there are various different ways that progress is being asked, and that depends on the granting body. But if you have a timeline, then you can always think, you can always keep in your mind, okay, we are lagging a little bit, or we are now more or less in the same timeline, so we can proceed like this, and so on. So that is very important in terms of two aspects. One, for the evaluator to judge, and the second one, for you to, progress the grant. Avoid dead times. If you don't have something working on that particular time, that is not good. So the dead time should be avoided. And then when building your timeline, consult with your other students. If you are new, you can ask from the other students who have the prior knowledge, prior experience, or you can discuss with your supervisor quite frequently and adjust the timeline and so on. So this is how a timeline is being prepared. So I have given you a model. So you can, the leftmost column has activities. So these activities should be these activities should be in line with the objectives, right? So if you have, let's say you have the first objective, and for the first objective, you can have 2-3 activities, right? To achieve that objective, you can have 2-3 activities. So those 2-3 activities you must mention here in the Gantt chart or in the timeline, right? So even though you have 3 objectives or 4 objectives, you will have like many activities because you need to do activities to, like few activities to achieve one objective. So those activities you must mention sequentially, right? And then you can have the timeline in months or in yearly or whatever the way that you like. If you have 3 months grant, then you will have to have the timeline for weekly timeline. If the number of months are limited, the timeline should be weekly. And then we are coming into the budget preparation. The budget will give you an appreciation of research cost. Okay? If you prepare a budget, you will understand how much of public money we are using for our own research, right? Though it is pathetic at this kind of a situation, with the country having huge debt, if our responsibility is to carry out research, then we should be able to do it. But there might not be enough funding available for us. So if you can gather funding or catch funding from outside, then that will be very helpful for the public of this country and for the government too. So I think ethically, I think it is better if you can go for grants, catch some travel grants, catch some research grants or postgraduate scholarships, fellowships from outside the country, so that you will not have bad feelings regarding what you do. If you have a proper budget prepared, then it will prevent you from overspending, right? It will prevent you from overspending. However, at this kind of a situation in a country where you have high rate of inflation and changing dollar rate quite frequently, and then you need to be very careful when you spend money from your grant. So that in that sense, if you have a good budget prepared earlier, then you will be very safe and you will be thinking, okay, depending on the priority, you can consider, okay, you are going to purchase this particular item or this particular item, right? At this kind of a juncture, it's very hard for us to have an estimated budget that is very well understood, but still you need to keep like 30% ability, 30% deviation, and include the budget with having 30% plus into the expenses. When you prepare the budget, you need to provide specific explanations. If you're using particular instrument, if you're going to purchase an instrument, or if you're going to like sends your samples out to get it analyzed from some other third party by paying them, then you really need to state the explanations for those. And if you request finances to go on conferences, especially transportation, instrumentation, and so on, then you need to justify those, right? So a good budget will have a detailed account of where you will be spending your money, right? And approximately 1/3 of the budget should go into supplies. That is what we in general think of when you look at the budget, right? 1/3 at least should go to consumers or supplies. If the budget is overestimating, it's okay to have 30% overestimation, but if you have like 50%, 100% overestimation, then your project will be rejected. And do not justify spending all the budget on personal. That means, you will try to find a student, and that student you will be paying a stipend. So don't spend the whole amount of money to pay the stipend. You might need to have some 30% or 1/3 of the budget for consumables, like, printing, analysis, chemicals, and many more. So the budget and the cost effectiveness should be, going in line with together. So cost sharing you can do if you have a sponsor, or if you have some other project which you can use some money to this particular proposed project, then there will be very high chance of acceptance because there is support already granted. And then be careful, don't cost share items that you can't document, right? You can't cost share items that you are spending from your own, or like unethical work that somebody, some of your friends who would like to work, who doesn't have any job, you will be hiring them as some supporters, some helpers to go get sampling and so on. So these kind of issues you should not mention, but you can mention it in other way, like you are hiring a technical assistant or something. And then check both sponsor and your own organization guidelines regarding cost sharing. So if you have already kind of MOU or some kind of guidelines given for cost sharing, then you must adhere to those things. Or if you have given those things from your granting body, then you have to agree upon these things. Most of the time, there is an overhead charge or indirect cost available, especially for the academia. If you are getting the grant from outside, then they will probably ask for an overhead charge. You have to discuss and come into a position whether you are paying the overhead charges or indirect costs from the received grant or not. Usually a percentage of total budget. It's not 45%, though I mentioned it here. It's like 20% most of the time. But more importantly, you must check with your granting organization whether they allow the overhead charge payments, right? As an example, if you have a grant from NRC, National Research Council, they will not allow you to have have overhead charges paid to the government, right? So depending on the grant that you have already, these overhead charges and sponsorships will be different. Then when you prepare the budget, you must demonstrate that the project is cost effective and it will have a significant impact for a reasonable cost. Otherwise, if the budget is very expensive, especially at this kind of a situation, you will not receive any funding. And you need to describe the organizational resources, how many staff that you already have, how many are you going to give, and what kind of facilities do you have in your organization to analyze this data or samples, what kind of equipments are available, how the authors are or the recipients are going to support. So these things you have to understand. So when you outline a budget, it's very important for you to understand from the sense of the granting organization, right? Most of the time, NRC, NSF, they have their own structure for the budget. So if there is such structure, then no matter what, you have to follow the structure. And then you need to remember that, like full justification you need to include, and then overcharging you must avoid. So these things you need to understand a bit thoroughly. So when you prepare the grant budget, pay attention to every detail, right? Every detail. What kind of travel costs that you have included, what are the suppliers, what are the advertising ways or personal salaries and so on, right? So these things you need to include with a good attention. And then afterwards, you have to double check. You have to double check because there can be errors in calculations and so on, right? So you really need to double check. And then you need to round off the numbers. There's no point of keeping like $173,000.50, right? So you really need to round off the numbers. What are the don'ts? What should not be done for a budget preparation? Do it alone. Don't do it collectively, because that will end up in having various ideas and you will be confused, right? So don't do it alone. Try to, don't do it alone. Try to get support from others. Try to get somebody to calculate the balance and all these things, because otherwise if you make a simple mistake like a calculation or like summing up the budget, that will not be giving a good impression on you. Don't forget about the indirect costs. So somehow you have to incorporate the indirect cost. Otherwise, you will not be able to run the grant. Then you have the outputs and outcomes. You must mention the outputs and outcomes from your proposed research as you are anticipating, right? As you are anticipating, because you have not done the work, so you don't know whether these outputs or outcomes can be made or not. But you have a vision, okay, this is the way I should proceed. So if I proceed in this way, I will get this particular output so that I can go for the outcome of the project, right? So you need to mention these things in your proposal. Especially you have to you have to remember, note that if you are putting an output, you must show measurable information regarding those outputs. So if you're going to provide drinking water for some public institution or some public like community-based project, then you need to include the measurable outputs. Or else, let's say that you are going to do a small grant proposal to assess the landfill leachate quality from some landfill site. So what can be the measurable output from this particular study you need to mention. Or you need to mention whether there will be a database of all these data and so on. So that you have to do, right? Measurable output should be included. How many patents, how many papers, and what kind of journals that you can approximately or you can assume and include. So output and outcomes give the reader or the evaluator regarding the qualitative and quantitative capacity of yours, right? So these things you can gain from writing outputs and outcomes. So remember that outputs is tangible, measurable, outcomes are not, right? Outcomes are more broad, right? More broad. Then you must mention the organizational capability, what is the potential or what is the ability of the particular organization to handle this grant, right? So you can mention that your organization has handled many grants of this nature, right? You can give a number. Or you can say that this particular organization have these instruments which are very helpful for us to work on, so that the evaluator would know that organization is having a strength, organization has the capacity to do it. And describe the prior experience relevant to the proposed project. That is also very important. If you are the PI, principal investigator, and if you are proposing some similar to your research area, then you will have more chances to get win the proposal, because you will not have many other factors to rely on. Right? Then finally, the references come. The reference list should be there in each proposal. And make sure that when you are referring, use a reference manager software. And there are many reference manager softwares which are free, like Mendeley. Mendeley is a reference manager software which is free of charge, open source that you can use. So if you use that kind of a reference software, that will be very easy for you to change the reference styles if there is any need. And remember, this is very important. Remember, if you are referring something, try to use the most recent references, like last 5 years references or last 2-3 years references. Do not use references more than a century or more than 50 years old, right? So it's very easy. You can gather references, citations or papers, so that you can read them and then you can cite them in your research, right? So when you cite these references, it's very important that you select the journals which are having very good reputation, right? Don't cite literature from some other non-indexed journals or some bad quality journals, right? And then ethical guidelines to be followed, because you need, if you are referring, you need to give the proper credibility for that particular person. So better to use one internationally accepted reference style if any reference style is not given in the proposal guidelines. Then advice on approach. The research, the funder, research, the funder, and the review process, right? If you have a grant call from some unknown body, like let's say International Atomic Energy Agency. So the International Atomic Energy Agency, you must read about them, their mission, vision, little bit, because you need to align your proposed research to fulfill their, approach to their mission and vision, right? So it is very important for you to read through the details about the funder and about the review process too. Always write for a reviewer. What does that mean? I told you yesterday, if you ask questions from yourself, then you will be able to write nicely, right? Because you know the question, so that you will answer to that question. So there will not be any possibilities for the journal editor to ask from you or reviewers to ask from you, right? So always think you as a reviewer and write the explanations coming onto your reviewer, you as a reviewer, right? So you as the reviewer, you will be describing so that the questions from the reviewer will be less. And communicate well. You can communicate with your colleagues, collaborators, co-investigators, so that there you can build a team to assess or to propose this particular research. That will be beneficial in many ways, especially for you to get funding, and for somebody else to get a stipend, and so on, right? Read the directions, because most of the granting bodies, they give directions, they give examples, they give some hints. So you need to read the directions, you need to read the guidelines of the granting body, right? And you need to follow them very nicely. And to understand the proposal is an instrument of persuasion. So the proposal itself, it is not a research, right? Yet. So you writing the proposal, you will understand how hard things would be during my proposal period. So that is very important for you to understand. After a small break, we will go for the postgraduate proposals, so that I can explain to you the differences and what are the most important factors that you must look into when you are writing a postgraduate proposal. So let's take a 5 minutes break and start at 10 o'clock.
I hope that if you have any questions, please post into the chat box. But I prefer that if you are posting only the questions to the chat box, other than any other thanking notes or whatever the things, you can put your thanking notes later on. Otherwise, it will confuse our reader, our resource person. And so take a break for 5 minutes and you can rejoin again. And also that here onwards, it's very important, and share this message with your friends. If they are not logging in, they can log in now. And right. And if you have any questions for me, that you can put a message to me to my phone, or otherwise you can call if you wish, or it's troublesome, but either I'm asking whatever calls you are giving. And also you can call. And okay, have a great day. Thank you.
Okay. From now on, we can discuss regarding the postgraduate proposals. Since I think there are many young students and young scientists are joining with us. So I thought of giving some briefing regarding how to write postgraduate proposals and what are the most important aspects that you need to consider in postgraduate proposals, because we have now discussed regarding the grant proposals where you need to bring money or bring instruments or bring infrastructure facilities to your institute to support your research. That is one aspect of proposals. And the other aspect is the fellowships or postgraduate opportunities. So my target here is, when I called about, it's postgraduate proposals, it can either be undergraduate too, but postgraduate, mostly MPhil and PhD or MSc, PhD I'm targeting here. Majority will be regarding PhD proposal. So postgraduate proposals are significant because it outlines the reason of your intended research. Most of the time, if you are going for postgraduate degrees where research is being involved, then it is a formality for you to write a proposal. So when it becomes a formality, most of the places there are kind of structure, but in some institutes there is no particular structure. Let's say, as an example, Postgraduate Institute of Science, University of Peradeniya. If you are writing proposals for your postgraduate degree, MSc or MPhil or PhD, there is no specific structure. The way that you write the proposal, they will evaluate. But in some cases, like some other universities, they have a particular structure, right? So you have to write based on the structure given. So in postgraduate proposals, it is it shows the intended research, that whatever you are planning to do, and your approach and methodology, how you are going to tackle this particular research, timeline and feasibility, and all the other considerations that is needed to progress your research, such as resources and testing protocols and so on. So think that postgraduate proposal as a tool which will help you to clarify, or which will help you to understand the idea of what you are going to do. So when you write your own research proposal for your postgraduate degree, then you will have a better understanding than your supervisor writing the postgraduate proposal for you, right? So the postgraduate proposals and grant proposals are not that differ, but not that different, but there are some differences. I will be discussing about those things now. So what is the need for you to write a postgraduate proposal? There might be, positions that are being advertised from universities. And for those positions, there might not be a need of writing a proposal. So depending on the university and depending on the scholarship for whatever the position that you are applying for, it depends. In some cases, there are already designed projects and approved and already funded. So they are seeking for postgraduate students. In that kind of a situation, you don't need to write a proposal because it has been already provided, right? But most of the cases, there are scholarship opportunities. There are opportunities for, like whenever you are writing to some, potential supervisors, they might ask you, okay, please send me a proposal so that I can see whether this can be done in my lab or what. So in that kind of a case, you really need to write a proposal. As an example, for DAD scholarship, DAD scholarship for Germany, you must write a proposal, and that proposal should be approved by your potential supervisor there in Germany too, right? So that's very important. In that case, you have to write the proposal. But let's say if one of the supervisors, potential supervisors has a grant which has been already approved and he is looking for some postgraduate students, and then he is calling for application. Then you don't need to write a proposal, but you need to understand what is the grant about, so that you can think of whether your qualifications are and your capacity is matching. What should a postgraduate proposal include? Right? If you have never written a postgraduate, or if you have never written a proposal, then it will be a little bit hard for you to think of, okay, what kind of things that I should include in this proposal. But it's not a big deal. So don't worry about it that much. A research proposal is a design, right, to catch you and to, it may be a difficult task, but you can start thinking of it as a challenge that given to you, right? So that research proposal should demonstrate 3 things, right? Especially the postgraduate research proposal should demonstrate 3 things. What are those 3 things? You must show that the postgraduate, that the research that you are proposing is worth and that is feasible, and you are capable of completing it. So these 3 things you must demonstrate from your postgraduate proposal. So these 3 things were not there in the grant proposal, right? Were there, but in a different way. But in this case, in a postgraduate proposal, that is you, right? You must show this project is worthwhile. You must show this project is feasible for you to do, and you are capable enough of doing it. So that you have to demonstrate from the postgraduate proposal. what and why, okay, and how and why. So let's say if it is a PhD project proposal, then it must have an originality. Without an originality, you cannot go for a PhD, like you will not be able to select for a PhD position. So a successful PhD project has to make a significant original contribution to science or to knowledge, right? So that is important, right? So you need to write something original. For that, you need to read quite a lot of papers. So that is the most important thing. You have to show, you have to demonstrate that research topic is original, right? Then nobody else has done it. But I have seen many proposals that people, students are discussing, okay, let's say as things in Sri Lanka, case study, let's say it's a case study in Sri Lanka. Somebody is going to analyze the soil pollution close to a landfill site, let's say, something like that. So that person might write, okay, there have not been any studies carried out on soil pollution around landfill sites in Sri Lanka. That's not enough. Studying the pollution in Sri Lanka will not give anything novel, anything new to knowledge. So there should be something novel in international context, especially if you do a PhD work, right? PhD means it is international, right? So do not consider yourself to restricted to a problem in Sri Lanka. So that is important. So that is why the demonstrating the research topic originality of the research topic is important, right? Then you will show the value of your study, right? You might examine new data or primary sources. So you must show how your project is original by making it original and discussing how it is becoming valuable. So when you show the value of your research, then it will become, it will be an original work, right? If you have something similar, which has been already done in the past, then there is no value, right? The value is very limited, right? So you need to explain why your proposed research will be academically significant, right? Why it is academically significant. When it comes to a PhD, it's all around the philosophy, all around the knowledge. It is the knowledge creation. When you talk about a PhD, it is new knowledge creation, right? So when you discuss about new knowledge creation, it is academically important, right? So that you have to show the value of your proposed research, why it is academically significant, what is the new knowledge that you are giving, right? For that, you need to show the gaps in reality, existing gaps in the knowledge, so that you are fulfilling those gaps. That is the value. The final step of demonstrating your PhD is worthwhile is to suggest what will become possible as a result of your research, right? After you finishing your PhD, after you complete your PhD, right? What will be the science gaining, or what will be the new knowledge gaining, or how you are going to do it, like how many papers that you will be publishing, and how from what else, from what kind of patent, or what kind of new things that you will be developing, right? Right? How important that would be for the general public, how important that would be for the academia or to the society. That is also showing value of your research, PhD work or the postgrad. And then you have to demonstrate that your PhD is feasible, right? Otherwise, the proposal is feasible, or the postgraduate proposal is feasible. That is very important. For that, you need to understand basic aspects of whatever, wherever you are writing it to. Let's say you are writing a postgraduate proposal to US. PhD, let's say PhD proposal to US. In the US, it takes 5 years for you to get a PhD. The minimum is 5 years to get a PhD. But in the Europe, UK and Australia, New Zealand, these countries, it's 3 years, right? What is the difference? In the US, you take coursework, a lot of coursework, and then small research work for your PhD. But in the UK, Europe, and Australia, New Zealand, those countries, even China, the Asian countries, Japan, those countries, you don't do coursework. You are 100% in your research, right? So in research wise, the US is bit back than the other countries where you have the 100% attention to carry out your own research, right? You may feel like 3 years even is a long time, but when you start your PhD, the 3 years will be passing very fast. So you need to manage your time. You need to propose in the research that is only feasible for you to study within 3 years, right? So that's very important, because you will be spending time on vacation, you will be spending time on conferences, little bit of teaching, and so on during your PhD. So that you need to think about what is feasible for you to do. And when you think about the feasibility, you need to think about the resources available in that particular phase too, right? So you can go through their website, you can check the instruments available and the facilities available, and then you decide what to be included for this particular feasibility of your research proposal, right? So that is very important for you to show that within the stipulated time period, you can finish this particular postgraduate work. Then you need to outline how you plan to do your research, right? So that is the methodology. So where will you start? And what order do you expect to proceed in? Is there any logic? So all these things you need to mention, right? You need to explain the methodology, especially the techniques that you are using, as we discussed previously, how you are going to collect data, what are the theoretical background, and what kind of analytical techniques you will be using, how the data being analyzed, and so on. So all these things. The complete plan should be given, right? The keyword is complete plan. Plan is the keyword. So the plan should be properly given as a proposal. Then you must demonstrate where you're going to work, with whom and where, right? So these, these things will give an idea and show the evaluator there is an enthusiasm of this person to conduct research in this particular university and so on. So writing a good proposal means it demonstrates your enthusiasm. So it's all about you, right? So if you really need to show that you are enthusiastic and you have the capacity, you have the potential, then you really need to write the proposal very nicely, right? So it's very important to note that here you should not tell anything. You should not tell that you are like this, you are this much of experience, you have this much of capacity, you have this much of certificates, you have gone through this much of coursework. No, that's not what is expected. You show it by the writing, by the planning ability, by the preparation. You show it, you demonstrate it, you show it to the evaluator. You don't tell it. So that's two different, right? Api කියනවා saha api පෙන්නනවා. I tell something to you, but I don't show it, right? I can tell many things. Just like the politicians in Sri Lanka, you can tell so many things, right? But you don't do. That is what has happened to this country, right? You can tell many things, but you don't do. That is not what should happen in a proposal. You show the person or the place that is being evaluating that you are capable enough to do this, right? Show it so that the other person will understand it, right? So that is the secret. That is the secret, right? So don't repeat the grades and academic achievements that you have, you have had a first class, you have had A's for these subjects and this and that. Don't. You show that you have this capacity. You have done this many, abstracts. You have done this many presentations and so on. So show it, highlight it, highlight what your capacity is without telling it. Right? And you must show that the project that you are proposing is a good fit for that particular university, right? Or that particular department, right? When something is novel, that, if you show it that it is good fit for that particular university or department, they will be very happy to take it, right? Right? So what you want to do it here, you have to consider the particular supervisor that you are targeting. Read whatever they have done in the previous, like recent past. What are their focuses? And, emphasize the fit of your project with that particular team, right? Don't just say that this particular university is highly ranked and therefore I would be very happy to join with this particular university. Don't say that. Don't say that. You must show that this university needs, the university has something from you, right? University will gain something from you so that you are important to the university, right? So that you need to emphasize. So the structure is very similar as the grant structure that we discussed earlier. Title, you need to be very clear and concise. And then you have to give an overview. So I'm not going into details because we have discussed these things yesterday. Methodology, you need to very clearly mention the methodology with citations. And you have to put the outcomes and the impact of your study. That is very important, the impact of your study. You have to thoroughly write it. And some tips are, you should be clear. So you have to write clear sentences. Don't keep any room for ambiguity and confusion. So be very clear, write short sentences, be very concise, right? Very concise, and then be very coherent because you need a nice structure, right? Don't start with your methodology. You have to have the funnel shape introduction and then come into your objectives later on. Before that, you have to put the research questions or gap analysis or justification so that that particular structure should be there. So that is what we call it coherent. How long, what is the length of the proposal? This is a question from various students. How long or what kind of, how many words should be there in a PhD proposal? I would say a PhD proposal should be less than 2000 words, in between 1500 to 2000 words, right? That is mostly for STEM sector. If it is arts and humanities, social sciences, then it is little bit longer. What are the do's? You should give yourself enough time to do a good job. That is very, very important. You can't rush writing a proposal. If you rush writing a proposal, then it will not be very successful. So take time, prepare yourself. You need to read quite a lot of literature. So you need time for that. So take time and try to do a good job. Don't allow any formatting mistake to be in your proposal. Spacing, and some students are sending proposals like we can't, it's a hassle for us to go through because there are spacing errors. Some paragraphs are justified, some paragraphs are just aligned to right or left, and many more, right? Some doesn't have units, and unit and number doesn't have in between a space. So if you are putting a unit, the between the unit and the number, there must be a space, one space. So these kind of silly formatting mistakes, spelling mistakes, grammar errors, all are these there. Why you should have all these things there? Since you have the capacity and you have the potential, you have the ability to correct all these things. Because there is spell checker, Grammarly is free for you to check grammar. All these free facilities are there. So you need to take time, learn those things, read many papers, and do a good job. Now, that is this particular postgraduate research proposal is written to impress someone about you. To impress someone about you. It's not to depress somebody about you. right? So if you need to impress someone about you, you need to do a super job, right? That is very easy, but you need the enthusiasm, you need to put some effort doing it, right? Demonstrate original thinking. So you are thinking about some original ideas by reading literature, right? So that is also very, very important. Don't, don't send the same proposal to several universities. And don't use online proposal templates, because many, any person who looked at the proposal will realize that is a template from somewhere. Then there are personal statements going with your postgraduate proposal, right? Your personal statement is different from the proposal. Personal statement has things about yourself. So you are marketing you. You are marketing you for the opportunity. So you must say who I am, who you are, what are the potentials, how, you should show the demos, you should show the enthusiasm you have. You don't tell that enthusiasm that these are the enthusiasms that I have. You are showing that, by giving examples, you are showing, right? You must show the reason that you choose this particular topic. You must show the reason why it is important to be studied, why it is interested you most, and what are the abilities that you have to conduct this particular proposed one, right? And how it fits to the future of you, future career plans of you, and what is the importance of studying this for this particular country or for the world or to the university, right? All these things should be clearly mentioned in a nice flow in the personal statement. Then there are common, easy to avoid mistakes. So those are the formatting mistakes, font margin, pages, the line spacings, between the titles, subtitles, and the paragraphs. So those mistakes are happening because you are rushing. You don't allow enough time. That is the reason. So if you manage your time, then it will be very easy task. And you should not have an overestimated budget. That is also a common mistake. So to improve your odds, to improve the problems, the issues that you are doing, to how to reduce the issues by improving your odds. Know what the evaluation criteria will be, check that and meet these. Right? So we know that evaluation criteria is how feasible this project be, how novel or what the originality is. So all these things are there. So you have to consider the evaluation criteria and address towards that. Start with an outline, easy. If you start with an outline, it will be very easy. Read some approved proposals. If you have some friends who had some approved proposals, read them. Once you finish writing the proposal, you ask somebody to proofread it, right? If you can use one diagram or model to illustrate something, use it. Prepare a diagram or model. So that will be easy, especially for the methodology. If you can put a flow chart, something like that, it will be very easy for the evaluator to understand that you have had a thorough knowledge. And make sure your supervisor, the potential supervisor that you are discussing the proposal with, will be approving before you submit it. Other common problems are research problem itself. It's very difficult if you have a bad research problem, or a common research problem or case study that you are thinking of, then it is hard because you should have the novelty. And scholarly background to the problem. So if the project that you are proposing has not been studied much, then the enthusiasm of the evaluators will be less. If your writing is unclear, too much jargon, or not well organized, no structure and so on, then it will be very hard for you to pass, win the proposal. If your methods and work plan is unclear, then it will be hard for you to win the proposal. And specifically, you need the specificity. You need the specificity. You need the focus for the proposal. So evaluation of the proposals, we are looking at the aims and objectives, and we are looking at whether these aims and objectives are achievable or feasible to be achieved in the given time frame. And what is the rationale for the problem? Like why? What is the justification? What is the gap in the existing knowledge? So that we can think of whether the project is reasonable or not. And the scientific design, right? Scientific design means the methodology. Are you using a proper validated method, right? And that method should be justified, saying why you have selected that particular method. It's very important for you to revise and edit the proposal. That is why we need enough time to work on the proposal, because you need several revisions, you need several editing steps to go ahead. So back up the proposal every day, you save it, you go through it again and change it, and doing re-editing and all these things. If you want, I can edit papers or whatever the proposals in the screen. But if you are more prominent, more enthusiastic, or more better for you to read in a paper, then you can print and read. Use a standard font, that is very important, like Times New Roman. And number your pages, that is also very important. And read out loud. You read your proposal out loud, so that you will sometimes feel like, okay, this sentence does not read nicely, so that you can change the sentence. So revising and editing is very important, so that you will eliminate the silly mistakes and develop a good proposal. So for that, you need to give time. You need to have time to work on the proposal much. So editing, check the title, edit and polish it. It's very important. You check the title many times, edit and polish it. Check the clarity of the objectives, edit, polish, and flow of the introduction, you can edit, right? So check whether the time plan is practicable, and clarity, readability of the proposal is there. You have to check these things, edit, polish, check, edit, polish. This cycle should go few times. So there is a cycle for everything, like even for a proposal. So when you write, first you conceptualize. And then you write. Then you review it or revise it. Then you send it to the evaluator. It may be funded right away, then you are okay. But it may be declined. Then if it is declined, you have to try again. You have to conceptualize again. You have to rethink what is the reason of decline in this. Maybe the novelty, maybe the writing structure and so on. So these things you have to go through. This is a cycle. So this cycle is going around and around. So writing, revising is the most important thing. So rejection is very, very common in scientific writing, whatever, even papers, abstracts, proposals, reject many times. So don't, step back, just revise it, improve it, and resubmit. One day you will be succeeding. So it's time for questions now. Professor Banduni, are you taking the question? So,
hello, can you hear me?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. I hope that you can raise hands, then we can unmute you, as well as that you can submit your, throw your whatever the questions to the chat box. I think there may be many questions to you, because this is a very important section of your research, scientific writing or scientific research. So please upload your questions. Ms. Bentika, do I have to read, or will you read by yourself and go through the questions?
Okay, I can read. So there is a question saying, can we present methodology as a flow chart instead of a paragraph form? Yeah, it's good if you can put up a flow chart, but still, it is very common in scientific writing. It says any figure or any table should be provided after the discussion. So you need to discuss briefly, and then you can provide the flowchart. That is fine. And share an example proposal with us. Okay. Example proposal. How do I share an example proposal? Banduni, is it okay? Because all these proposals that are being given to a granting body or to a postgraduate institute. Yeah, I can share if you really need one example proposal. But by looking at example proposals, you will understand to some extent, but you have to write and practice it. I can share it if you send me, like if I can, send it to Professor Banduni, she can
Yes.
share it in the.
Yes, another thing that if you can show it to them, I think probably they may ask to show it rather than sharing. If you have one with you at this moment, then you can share, you can show it to them and
Okay.
get highlighted points.
I'll try to find one.
Okay.
Then mention some good journals. This is a really vague question. I'm not sure which field that you are referring to. So without knowing the field of science that you are referring to, I can't mention good journals. You can easily go to SciMago website. It's called SciMago. So the SciMago website, you can type the journal name. When you type the journal name, there will be the journal information appearing. And in that page, if you go down, you can see whether this journal is a good quality journal by the Q factor. So there are Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 journals. Q1 is the best journal. Best 25% journals are in the Q1 list, and Q2 likewise. So if the journal that you think is in Q1, that is the best journal that you can find in the world. So the Q factor is the most important and easily find factor for you to consider good journals, depending on your field. Then what has to be the optimum length of a proposal? I have given the answer for this. It's basically around 2000 words. and then how to give a good start for a new research topic. That depends on your field, yeah, and your interest. So if you have an interest, you need to read quite a lot of literature from that particular interest area, so that in the literature, in each of the papers, at the end of the introduction section, there will be the gap analysis discussed, and also in conclusions there might be they might be given, what are the future work that you should plan, so that from that future work aspect also you can gather some information. And the best thing is to read very recent review papers. When you read very recent review papers, then there will be a section on future implications or future perspectives, so that in the future perspective section, many future research that are needed to be planned might have been given, so that you can understand. Should we include a time frame of the research in the proposal? Yes, exactly. You need to, that is an essential section. You need to add a time frame. Without the time frame, there is no worth in that proposal. How many articles should be reviewed in the literature review part in the postgrad proposal? I would say at least 25 articles. My contact details, you can get it from Professor Banduni, or you can search in the internet. That's available in the internet. My phone number and even my email address. And then finding an unexplored area or very new topic seems to be difficult these days. It is not unexplored areas that we are looking at. We are looking at a very small segment of a research study that has been already carried out. So let's say if it is like water quality, then water quality studies are being very common. But we can at least try to find a new way to create an index to easily, give the guidance for the general public to see whether this water is drinkable or not, or to produce an electrode which you can use easily at home and check whether the water is suitable for drinking or not. So those are not unexplored areas, but there are enough room still available for novel things for you to produce, right? PPT is downloading, I think Raj Banduni will answer. I found some PhD theses with similar topics in the internet. Yes, many PhD topics will be there. And what is the difference between outcome and the impact? Outcome is the broader sense that is similar to impact, not a big difference. Impact is the real solutions that you are providing from your own research to either to the knowledge, to society, or to economy, or to some other sector and so on. Does SOP to foreign university follow the same fashion? It depends. I have showed you the statement of interest, how would it be? So SOP is not exactly a proposal, but it is similar to a statement of interest. Again, asking my details, you can easily find it from the internet. When we write proposals for foreign scholarships for higher education, do we need prepare budget to? No, no. You know, I feel like you have not taken the, you have not followed my lecture because I clearly showed you the postgraduate scholarship and the difference between the postgraduate scholarship and the grant scholarship. So in the postgraduate scholarship, we didn't discuss about budget. So it's very clear. You have not listened, I guess. Could you kindly share? I don't have SOPs. Maybe you can find it from the internet. I can show you a proposal, but not SOPs, because I don't have SOPs. I'm not, I have never written a SOP because I was selected from interview for my postgraduate, so that I have never written an SOP. Let me try to find a proposal if I have. Bandhani, you can give the information regarding how to find the slides in the internet and so on until then.
Okay. Right. So one question is, you have asked Professor asked credentials. So if you go to the Sri Javatirpura University, the Faculty of Applied Sciences, you can find it out. And yeah,
You can just type my name in the internet. It will be
and yes, and she's very famous, of course. We have to say. And so, what are the other questions actually you was asking? If you want, you can hands up, means raise hand, and then we can allow you to unmute. We can unmute you, and same time, wait, actually that.
I actually found a proposal which I have written earlier. So this proposal was written for a scholarship to a PhD. This was written little long ago, so that I think you can see this proposal. So during those times, we didn't have, reference manager softwares available, but now we have reference manager softwares available. So if those reference manager softwares or Grammarly or whatever was applied, then these kind of mistakes will not be available in this particular, proposal. So we start from an introduction, and then you write about the project and the bit of the whatever had been studied in the literature. And then this is the background or the justification for the research. And then you provide the rationale why you are planning to do this particular study. And then it comes to the scope of the study. What are you going to analyze? What are you going to study in this particular project? Then it comes to the objectives, and then the research methodology is thoroughly given. Data interpretation, analysis, laboratory facilities available. You are discussing, where you are going to study this, either, the Peradeniya or somewhere else, and whether what kind of facilities are available. And then the time schedule, the Gantt chart is being given, divided into 3 years, year 1, year 2, year 3. and like quarterly divided each year. And then you can clearly see, the activities, as I told you earlier. Each objective can have different activities, so those are given. And then expected outcomes. Since it is a PhD proposal, the outcomes are like scientific journal publications and conferences and so on. And then you have to write, list the references. So that's one proposal that I could show you. So if I show you a proposal which has been written for a grant application, then it looks like this. So without any structure, I have just written the proposal without making, without pasting it into the structure given. This grant actually was granted by the Ministry of Science and Research and Technology. So we have discussed the background of the problem and justification of the research. And then, everything depends on how, what kind of place that you are placing your proposal, whether they have a structure or not. So since they didn't have a structure, so we directly discussed the background and justification in one page, and then went into the objectives. Here we have set up 4 objectives. Then the methodology, analytical methods, and accuracy, you discussed each one by one. So the very first objective, what are the activities and how you're going to do the methodology. The second activity, you are going to collect the samples. How are you going to collect the samples? How are you going to analyze, and so on. Then for the third objective, you're going to discuss the methodology. Fourth objective, again, you are discussing the methodology. Likewise, you can do. And you can give the intended outcomes and the relevance. And then again, the Gantt chart. Then comes the budget. So budget has been categorized into equipments, chemicals and consumables, and so on. Travel, stipend, and so on. Then existing instrument resources, we are giving the capability here. What do we have in our own laboratories, so that we see. And then research team has been described, then references, and that's all. So this is how some examples of the research proposals. Anything else? If you want to ask, you can ask.
Yes. Rosmetka, can you unmute this engineer?
Who?
Yeah, the person who has raised hand.
Hello, madam.
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah, you can raise your question. Yes.
So if he is not asking the question, I will show another MPhil proposal that has been submitted to the Postgraduate Institute of Science, University of Peradeniya, from one of my students. So here we have put a title page. So where you are putting where to submit the proposal here. So MPhil proposal to Board of Study, whatever the Board of Study, and then Postgraduate Institute, which institute that you are submitting, then the title and the name of the research student and where he or she is working on this particular work, and then listing the internal supervisors, external supervisors. Afterwards, then share the title given and background to the study. So background is being given. So I have included, to remove the silly mistakes and cite most recent articles and so on. So then once the introduction is done, she has mentioned the objectives of the study. So overall objective is given, and then comes the specific objectives. So keep in mind, specifically if you are going for a postgraduate research proposal, do not go beyond 3 objectives, right? Because it is hard for you to achieve more than 3 objectives within the stipulated time period. If it is like 3 or more years research grant, then 4 objectives, 5 objectives would be possible, but not for a postgraduate degree. So here she has mentioned 3 objectives, and the materials and methodology has been written based on the 3 objectives, right? So based on the 3 objectives, she has categorized the methodology in various different experiments that she is planning to do. So one first experiment with something else, and the second experiment with some other, and the third experiment is something else, and so on. So likewise, the clear methodology should be given, and the methodology should be really elaborated, just like the introduction. And you can clearly see, I have asked them to include references. She has included references in each and every experiment that she do. And then the time plan. Here I have, given, I have removed phase 1, phase 2. There's no phases in postgraduate scholarships or postgraduate degrees, so that, you can give the activities done, and then the references. So this is a very common type of MPhil proposal, or these kind of proposals can be easily used for PhDs as well.
Professor Mehtika, would you please mention that how the objectives to be formulated a little? I think you have mentioned a little revision, because they have to use a verb, kind of a measurable verb should be there. That means that the outcome should be measurable.
Yeah,
Outcome
that
should be shown, yes.
it depends on the field of study, because if it is like chemistry based kind of, then you have to test the hypotheses that you have based on experiments. So those experiments you should mention, and then the final objective should be the measurable outcome from that particular objectives, from the previous objective. So it depends actually, depending on the field, writing the objectives can be a little bit different. How to select papers for literature review?
It was explained by Professor Malatunga at the second lecture. Professor Vitika can elaborate, but however that if you have
can
followed
easily,
these sessions, yes.
find the literature. You can find one good paper regarding one good quality paper based on your research title. And then in that paper, there is a huge reference list, right? So from that reference list, you can find the related papers to your study. Likewise, you can go back and forth and find. So most important thing is you are finding references in the very recent few years. Advertisements are also there in the chat box.
Yeah, that's what I also feel, that is very bad. Engineer layout, don't do that. If your things are in the internet, if they are referring, if they are willing, then it will come out. But don't do any, because I have noted that you earlier also you mentioned those kind of things, but don't do it again, Mr. Engineer layout. Right?
Can you please upload sample research proposal document for reference only? We don't have sample research proposals because we write research proposals either for funding, get funding for grants, or either for postgraduate degree. So since I don't have research proposals written for postgraduate degrees, all are written by my students, I can't upload them because they have their intellectual property rights with those proposals. And the proposals written for grants also contain intellectual property rights, so that it is not possible to put sample, the already written proposals. Sample research proposals, I think you can easily download from the internet. There's not much, You have the introduction, you have this structure, objectives, methodology, all these other things given.
On the other hand, for Smritika, we have conducted 2 days research on writing, how to write research proposal. So in that case, actually, I'd like to ask you to revisit these sessions, and we will upload those to the YouTube, and then you can find out how to write it. That if after having these sessions, also if you are unable to write, then it's a big problem. Actually, that means we are not.
Yeah, the thing here is, if you don't practice, then you will not get it. Because scientific writing is totally practice. You have to practice writing, you have to practice. If you don't write and don't practice, then by looking at a sample proposal or by looking at somebody else's proposals, you won't be able to write at all. So the writing is coming from the practice. How much you are writing will improve your writing skills. Otherwise, it's just a dream. When we are writing a PhD proposal, do we require our publications for MSc, BSc research? No, it's not. Your publications can be from a different field. If you have publications, some publications, then it will be beneficial for you to get selected for the PhD, because it must not be in the same field, because you are being evaluated for your writing skill. So whatever the research field doesn't matter. Do we require to address relevant professor institutions? Yes. If it is not an open call for postgraduate scholarships, then better to go find few professors and go with them. So they will guide you for getting scholarships. Searching PhD opportunities on website. Requested motivation letter. Yeah, motivation letter is what I discussed earlier. Statement of interest. So that is the motivation letter. it is not, it is, yeah, it can be a covering letter too, depending on, if it says motivation letter, yes, it can be a cover letter. But if it says a statement of interest, then it is not a letter, right? It is just a essay. Okay, Bandhani, we can wind up, I guess.
Yeah, if there are no more questions, then we can wind up, and we are planning to upload these sessions to the IESL YouTube channel. And once Mr. Shamila is ready for that, it will be there. And so once again, thank you very much, Professor Neetika, for joining with us and sharing your valuable experiences, as well as the guidance and advices for the students. And of course, you always are helping us to the IESL, as well as to me personally, and for our research, and also for research for my students, as well as for many of this country. And you have many collaborated. So actually, it's really good that you join with us and share your very valuable experience. So if all the participants, thank you very much for joining. And if